So, do or die, I guess that's pretty ominous. So today we will talk about several topics. The economy, which of course is on everyone's mind in an election year. And it's amazing how things play out, right? Retail usually sinks before and is usually better afterwards. So that's what everyone's hoping, although warm weather is never great. We'll talk about the retailers, so most of you in this room. We'll talk about the consumers, so those who are driving retail, and then we'll talk about technology, which of course is my favorite topic. Actually, we happen to be in Austin anyways. We actually ran a startup pitch competition yesterday for eight retail technology providers, and two of the companies that won, one was a company called Door, and the other one was Glass Media. So very interesting and very relevant for all of us. So our company, for those of you who don't know, we're based out of Hong Kong. We have 3 publicly traded companies. We're mainly in the supply chain space, but we also have 5,000 retail stores in China. And our group itself, we sit at the intersection of retail, fashion, and technology. So we provide insights broadly around the world. We have a team actually based in New York, where I spend most of my time. We also have a team in London and we have a team in Hong Kong. So we are truly global. And one thing which is not in my slide deck, so I'll bring it up briefly right now, we actually have a living laboratory, about 250,000 square feet in Shanghai, where actually major global retailers, so you'll have to visit to find out whom, will actually experiment and will work hand in glove with Chinese consumers to test and see what actually will work in that environment. So that's one of the things that we're actually working on a constant basis. And actually, many organizations have talked about bringing that kind of lab actually into the United States to see what would actually work on the ground here. So that's who we are. So let's talk about the macro environment, which is changing on a daily basis. So unfortunately, in the second quarter, GDP was a bit disappointing, coming in at 1.4%. So once again, I always call out the weather, right, because that can be a major driver. We've obviously had some, I'd say, concern about the political environment. And certainly in an election year, things are usually, it's not played out that much different, especially when you are voting on a completely new president. The positive news is the US inflation pace is still modest, especially with gas prices. However, US food deflation is impacting grocery. This is very interesting to us, and probably to many in this room. So once again, as somebody who's followed the grocery industry, I'm not going to say the number of years, but we always looked at what's happening in terms of pricing between restaurants and grocery. That's not me. I can do a dance if you want, but that's not me. But what we've seen is that between the restaurant and the grocery space, we are seeing a widening price gap, which could drive the consumer again to spend more at grocery. And there are a lot of things that are driving that as well. So we are seeing increased price competition, and online grocery is set to boom. We were actually just down with Walmart for a few days, and there's certainly a lot that's been happening there as they've increased their price investments, and it's really impacting grocery very broadly. And I'm not saying anything that if anyone read the second quarter transcripts from many of the retailers, it was talked about by almost every grocery retailer in the second quarter. And it was very interesting. I think Dollar General was probably the one who was probably the most vocal, but it's been kind of pronounced and very interesting. So we thought we'd put this chart together, actually just for this presentation, to think about just all the themes right now in grocery. It's actually, and let me tell you why grocery is actually my favorite sector. And we look at everything. I mean, we look at anything from home improvement to luxury, anything in the world of retail and retail tech. Because you start to see the consumer change first in grocery, right? So the average consumer goes to the grocery store still, physically, 2.1 times a week. She spends 45 minutes there. And, right, you start to see changes in the center of the plate. And so I think, and I actually started off, just so you guys know, I started off my career actually in global strategy at Morgan Stanley. And so I was always interested in the macro environment. But I think you actually can understand the consumer first through her plate, because that's where changes show up first. And so I always thought that, right, in this metadata, data analytics strategy world, I actually think that people could understand the consumer better if they spend more time with grocery. So just a thought for a retail startup there. So if we look at what's happening, obviously, e-commerce, and it's the one sector, and I want to sound this as a warning bell, it is the one sector that really has yet to be disrupted, right? We're still at, if you look at the data, right, 1 to 2% of grocery is online. And I think that, right, because she does spend 45 minutes 2.1 times a week, that's a lot of time. And it's not like it's that rewarding of an experience, because unfortunately, we still haven't seen a great experience come into retail in general. Why is, and I don't have a slide, but right, this whole idea of experiences, not things, retail is still not yet experiential. It's not that we can't get there. I actually am the one who's usually arguing. I think I'm the one out there who says, yes, I think the malls can be great again. I think retail can be great again, but we have to create a great experience. And I do go into some stores. I actually think that some retailers are. I actually think that Walmart, I think the new head of Walmart US, Greg Ferran, I think the stores are cleaned up. I think it is a much better experience. But I'm still not super excited to go to the store, right? But I think that we can get there. And I'm really actually very positive on that. And that's why one of the reasons that we do spend so much time with a lot of these startups, because I want to introduce them to those of you in this room so we can make retail great again. And exciting. It's just, I mean, it's great. It's just, it can be better. And I do worry about online competition. That's my fear. So this is just a quick overview. But this is the thing that's, I think, really starting to change things. And the other thing is, if we look at the last bullet here, this, if we look at this aggressive response, it is starting to work. But Walmart's investing, let's call it $4 to $5 billion per year in terms of price investments. But there's another change that's starting to happen. And if you look also here, this last bullet, Dollar General entered the price wars in August with an average price reduction of 10%. That's hitting everyone's bottom line, right? And we're not yet seeing a significant opportunity to take out cost. And the dollar stores are the ones who are most aggressively putting new boxes into the ground. So we're still seeing, right, I actually sit on this International Council of Shopping Centers Research Task Force. So we're hearing about the death of the mall and no new boxes, and I'm like, we're definitely seeing, in the small box world, we're seeing tons of new small boxes. But the one that's concerning me the most, and should concern everyone in this room outside of e-grocery, if that's what we want to call it, I like that word, is Lidl. Who in this room has been into a Lidl? Okay, I see a few hands. So it's a 36,000 square foot, and I don't even know if we want to call it a hard discounter, but it's a discounter. And they're coming to a city near you in 2017. Walmart's estimating about 150 of these. And they'll have name brand merchandise. It's kind of like a cross somewhere between like an Aldi and a Trader Joe's. And they will start to change the face of grocery. So you're going to have Amazon on one end, you're going to have Aldi and Lidl on the other end. And I'm telling you, things are going to be disrupted. As somebody who looks at disruptive technologies, this is disruptive retail. And the dollar stores also have really started to change things. So right, this top bullet, it's now 2.5% of grocery spend. Right? And they're putting more and more new boxes into the dirt. Right? And because they're being coveted, right? Because there's a lot of empty space. I mean, yesterday, so I was at this International Council of Shopping Centers conference yesterday, also in Austin, and right, one of the big topics was, how do we fill all the empty space, right? Do we have pop-ins? But dollar stores certainly are able to do that for us. So this goes back to this concern over margins, right? Where because of the aggressive price discounts, and technology can certainly help to a certain extent, but we are seeing pressure on margins. So this is also interesting, and this is what I talked about with Aldi and Lidl and Trader Joe's, is the share that they are continuing to gain. And Lidl is the one, I think, concerned. And I think it's also the size, right? I mean, you look at the Walmart neighborhood market size, this is about the same size of that box, just to give you, but this is a small grocery store. I mean, it will have every category. And it's a pleasant shop, and it's name brand. So it's not, once again, Aldi, which is mainly just its own brand, Lidl is national brand and merchandise, it's a pleasant shop, and they're coveting more upscale consumers. So this isn't, going after kind of, this is going to appeal to middle America and a higher income consumer. So we've got a lot of changes underfoot in the grocery space, not to mention e-commerce. So I've talked about this idea of Amazon as a pipe into the home. And I said, you can get anything through that pipe, right? You can get cars, you can get Furniture, you can get anything once you've got the pipe. But grocery to me is even more important. So I live in Manhattan, and there's a grocery store literally across the street from me. I'm very fortunate. It's actually a very good one. And, well, actually, once they went through the construction and there wasn't, like, dust in my food. But anyways, we'll let them pass. So I used to use Fresh Direct. And I don't want to say anything too negative about Fresh Direct, but I moved. I didn't use them for a little while. They never emailed me. They never texted me. And I used to order from them twice a week. It was probably about the equivalent of I have, family, probably about $2,000 a month. And I just disappeared. I ghosted. And they never reached out to me. And they had all kinds of, and they had permission to contact me because when they were late, they used to text me. So shame on them. Now Amazon Fresh comes to town. And what starts to happen with Fresh Direct? My apples are a little squishy. I can't get delivery windows. And what's amazing with Amazon Fresh, not only do I order that morning, it comes that afternoon, but I'm starting to get mail from them telling me about mail, right? That's old-fashioned. About specials. So very personalized. And I feel very special. So we're starting to see Amazon get very aggressive. And they're starting to text me and email me. Amazon Fresh, not Amazon Prime or the rest of Amazon, but just Amazon Fresh. So, and I would tell you, and it's a very personalized delivery. The guy comes up to my apartment. He hands me, because I don't know if you guys has anyone in this room used Amazon Fresh? Okay, a few hands. So they take it out of the cooler, they hand it to you, and then they take the coolers away. So you actually have like a relationship with your Amazon Fresh delivery guy. So this is, as I would say, the next kind of grocery battleground. Walmart and Kroger are getting aggressive, right? Nobody's going to take this one kind of laying down. And I think that we have a significant opportunity. So Kroger's, I would tell you that one of the reasons that these guys, they've continued to be aggressive in acquisitions is to be on the forefront of, let's just say, click and collect and e-grocery. And Walmart, so we were just with them in terms of this idea of how do you boost your online grocery. But we're still not seeing a major grocery shop, right? It's more of your fill-in. Because people, if you're going to buy meat or if you're going to buy apples for your produce, people still want to go to the grocery store. It's more of that fill-in shop. So if I need just a few items, that's what we're seeing for the most part, how the consumer is utilizing online. So Instacart is one thing, and we're seeing a lot of retailers have partnered with them. And Kroger in 2015 rolled out the click list. Target has partnered with Instacart. But we are seeing, right, a real kind of movement through here, right? 2014, 2015, 2016, and who knows what 2017 will bring. But I'll tell you, that Jet.com acquisition by Walmart, that was a bold move. And I think that probably shook the rest of the e-grocery market in terms of what it meant. So if we look here, Walmart has added pickup to 30 more markets. And by the end of this year, they'll have curbside pickup, if we want to call it that, in 600 locations. So, right, and a lot of times, right, people end up going to the store anyways. Right, you've got them captive now in your parking lot. So we talk about that. I love the idea of, right, the pipe into the home, but you have the pipe into the store with Walmart. And I think they've been very smart about that. So, and also too, if any of you have been in there, right, you can also just go in there and you can sit and wait, and they'll also just bring you your items. So this idea of, right, just making it easier for the customer. So we are seeing, this Uber and Lyft roll out with them as well. But the idea is, right, what works? Right, if we go back to the prior presentation, test and learn, put the customer first. So, right, what does the customer want? What's the easiest way to connect with your customer? And it is probably different for everyone. And now that we are able, right, the consumer's opting in and we have more data on the customer, it's probably a little bit different for everybody. And how do you reward them? I think that that's also incredibly important. Freebies, right? So after I order a certain amount of things, is there something, do you put something else just into my basket that I wasn't expecting? So I do think that, what's so interesting right now is that Prime is still, where it's at. But Amazon Fresh is growing. I mean, Amazon Fresh is still not in that many markets, right? I mean, it's still in like 10 markets. So we still don't see it rolled out that aggressively. So that's also, and I think they don't want to have a mistake, right? They don't want to roll out into a market and have the consumer be disappointed. So I think they've also taken the rollout very, very slowly. So Walmart could also become much more aggressive, right? But they haven't, right? They're going from 400 to 600. And what you're seeing is Instacart is also, partnered, but has been careful. So I do think that we haven't seen any real mistakes in the e-grocery market so far. And I think that's been smart. Walmart provided some details at their recent analyst meeting, and they have basically stated that everything in the grocery pickup space has exceeded expectations. And I think a lot of it has been the consumer actually going into the store. So think about that. For all of you in this room, whether you're in grocery or not, think about what you can do to make it easier for the customer to come into your store. And even if it's just, having the items ready so you can put them in the trunk of their car, and then you potentially get them into the store, right? There's other ways to apply this information in terms of how do you put the customer first, how do you make it easier for them, how do you surprise and delight them, because I think that that's so important these days. And I do think price matters, right? I mean, there's this idea of like price transparency, and Walmart talked about this a lot, right? Because the consumer can now see the price online, they can see the price in the stores. How do you, right, this idea between the physical and the digital world, right? This idea of like the fourth dimension, I call it the fourth dimension of retail. How do you start to kind of think about price in that world? I mean, think of it that you have to worry about that, I don't have to worry about that. I think that that's incredibly difficult. And I think it's a real challenge. I mean, people talk about this idea of like a 5% price cap between online and offline, but I do think that that's very challenging. So this top bullet is one that does actually, I sleep very well, but this top bullet does keep me up at night. So the good news is that our company actually works to supply Amazon, so theoretically they grow, we grow, but I do worry about what this means for all of retail. So they are significantly outpacing growth amongst all of retail. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other winners and losers, but we have significantly seen. And for those of you who aren't aware, right, they've leased 40 cargo planes. In Cincinnati, they bought the DHL airbase, and they are rumored to be opening convenience store locations. So we're starting to see theoretically a retailer that's becoming much more than a retailer, right? They're starting to become a logistics company. So it is really interesting to see just kind of how far and wide, and this idea that they're trying to own the retail ecosystem. So it's definitely something that, to think about. All right, so now to think about the consumer and how they're changing and how we can change with them. If I can get my clicker to work. So the positive is that the consumer is not really doing that much in terms of grocery, either on digital or mobile just yet. It's really in the electronic space, right, where price is so much more important. And I still think it goes back to this idea of experience. And I think that that is also important in terms of beauty and in fashion, where it's this connected consumer. She's connected, but she still wants to go into the store to have the experience. And she might do a lot of her homework online, right? So she might know the ingredients in the food. She might know a lot about what she's buying, but she still wants to have that experience in the store. So, right, what we've continued to see is that the consumer comes to the store in a mall less often, right? She used to go 5 times a year. She now goes 3 times a year, but she's more purposeful in her shop. So, and they're shopping differently for different products, right? I don't know if I have here we go. So once again, online versus in-store shopping preferences. Once again, when you look down here at grocery, much more of it is for, this change. And this is what's even more interesting is, I think we've talked about millennials. Everyone has, ad nauseum. But we do see this percentage of U.S. shoppers who have used an online channel for groceries, much more so in the millennials and Gen Xers versus the boomers, and we'll call it more mature. But still, it's only about, it's 1/4 of the U.S. population. So we are seeing that a lot of people have tried it, but a lot haven't as well. And I think a lot of it's not in their markets. Kroger, I don't know if you guys are aware, Kroger owns Vitacost. So there are other, outlets. There have been acquisitions in terms of, new and innovative ways to buy grocery online. But we're still seeing that there's a lot of people who haven't even tried it, which can be good and can be bad. So, and there's people who aren't even trying to go into the space just yet. Okay, so if we look at strategies, so I borrowed this from my good friend Jerry Storch, who's the CEO of Hudson's Bay. And it's this idea of the all-channel universe. So, it's not omni-channel, right? It's not growing up through the ground or through the sky. It's all channels, and they're all converging. And so the good news is that the consumer shops, we all hear it, where she wants, when she wants, how she wants it. But, the good news is that you can connect with her in many different ways. And so I always look at it as a positive that, she can, she wants to order it in the store and have it delivered to her home. But a lot of times, this also creates some challenges in terms of how do you get it to her? And what we're starting to see, so we also we are a logistics company, is that this idea that you can start to save costs, all of you in this room. So we go back earlier in this presentation to this idea of margins and margin compression. So starting to work with your vendors to have things more direct shipped. So let's think about, as an analyst, all I did was think about costs, right? All I thought about was the bottom line. I thought about the top line and the bottom line, and how did retailers get there? And how could you take out cost? And how could you be more aggressive with your vendors? So that was the thing that I spent, and I would advise companies on this all the time. So this idea of more, direct ship, more, how can you partner, right? All of you in this room, how can you sit down? You're all here for a few days. How can you think about partnering with each other to take out costs in the supply chain? There's significant ways, and I can certainly spend some time with you to help you think through that. But there's a lot of opportunities, and a lot of it is how you think through this all-channel universe, because there are a lot of changes. So this to me was, and I know Jet really well. We spent a lot of time with Jet before. Well, I'll just leave it at that. So we have a capital arm called Fund Capital. So in terms of investing and whatnot. So before Walmart acquired Jet, we spent a lot of time with the management team. And one of the things that was interesting, and I'm not sure how much you guys are aware of, but this idea of basket economics. So the more items that were put in the basket, the cheaper the basket got for the consumer, right? And one of the things that Jet did is, right, they would think about how to source and how to work with different retailers, and they still do, and how to make it cheaper for the consumer. So when you look at these numbers, and this is obviously what Walmart looked at, is that in a very short period of time, right, they had 210 million unique visitors, they had 6 million total app downloads, and 2.5 million repeat orders. And they were getting, but this is, to me, this was like the coup de grace, 7 units per order. Why? Because the more units you put in the basket, the cheaper the basket got. And you didn't really know, right? This was their big algorithm. And they were all doing this with 200 people. That was how big Jet was. That's how incredibly efficient they were. So I can give you numbers for other companies on the tech side and how big and how many data scientists they have. You'd be shocked at how efficient this was. So I figured that they had talked about being around for 5 years. I'm like, there's no way someone's going to snap them up because they are that good. But this idea of this basket economics. And so in a period of, let's call it, they were already running at a 1.2 billion GMV. So, and now with Jet and with Walmart, you have a marketplace with basically 35 million items. So they call it smart cart technology. And so they make these big baskets more efficient. But so Jet had 15 million items, Walmart had 20 million items, so you're 35 million items. I love these marketplaces, right? Because it saves time. So I've encouraged, and once again, I won't ever use retailers' names, it's not my style, but I've encouraged a lot of retailers to think about a marketplace, right? Why can't I just have one-stop shop? Make it easy for the consumer. Put the customer first, right? So I now find that in my own shopping, I go to Amazon first and I go to Walmart second. So, right, because I don't want to have to keep on putting in, right, my credit card information, et cetera. And I also want to feel like I'm shopping in a secure environment. And so, right, I trust those two retailers. And so that's a real positive. And so I think, but I go back to this idea of partnerships. So every year I go to CES, the big consumer electronics show in Las Vegas. It's held in early January. And one of the big themes for 2016 was this idea of partnerships. And so I think it's one of the easiest ways to survive and thrive, and especially if you're not competing in the same channel, but even if you are. So does anybody have Alexa in their home? Okay. So, right, so this can really change everything. And there's another company called AdStructure, which is also natural language, which competes with Alexa. So, right, you know when you've made it when you start to see you're competing. But Alexa actually, for those of you who don't have, you can just say, Alexa, order this for me, or Alexa, what's the weather, or Alexa, play this tune. But you're really bringing Amazon into your home in a whole new kind of way. And you have to basically have Amazon Prime to have all the additional extensions, but it's really starting to change things. So this is the hardware pipeline. And then the dash buttons, which originally everybody kind of laughed at them. This idea that you can just push a button and you can reorder. And then Quick, once again. So Quick actually is working with, it's open to any retailer, not just the ones that Amazon assigns. But Quick was actually won a competition at South by Southwest. So we're seeing a much more expansive use of the buttons, and they've been very successful. So scan and go applications, both Kroger and Walmart are using these. They've been very successful. Sam's Club is too. This is fascinating to me, this bottom. So once again, new technology, I don't even know how new this is. Sam's Club saw a 10% increase in basket size. Why? Because you know along the way how much you're spending. And usually I think at a club, you always think you're spending way too much money. And at Sam's, you're like, oh, I've only spent this much? Oh, I can add more to my basket. And it goes back to, I'm so big on this entertainment idea while you're shopping. It makes shopping, you're more engaged, it's more fun. So I do think that there's something to be said for this, but just thinking about, you can test things in 10 stores, you can test things in 20 stores, have the A/B test. So see how it works in some stores and not in others. So electronic shelf labels, so some retailers here in the US, certainly this is very big in France, but we're seeing this as, first of all, think about the amount, I go back to cost savings always. Think about the amount of money it saves, so you don't have to have people, changing the labels. Well, in a dynamic pricing environment, every day in some cases, right? But this allows you to change price. And as we're starting to enter a new world, you can start to tailor the promotions or tailor the message to the consumer. The technology's out there, we're seeing it. So, and there's certain retailers who I'm under NDA and I can't say, who are actually doing this in the US. So there's some really interesting things that are happening that make it really interesting. And then AR, augmented reality. So we've actually been asked to work with some retailers to design games like scavenger hunts, even at the high end. So how do you reward a high-end consumer, right? How do you make it more engaging, right? So think about it, right? Do you get pearls as you go through different departments, right? How do you introduce them to new products? So I think Pokemon Go, and this is why I use the example, I think it really kind of opened up the, call it the retailer, the CEO's mind, right? A lot of them, they're like, oh yeah, my kids play Pokemon Go, my wife plays it, now I understand it, I get it. And so what we've seen is a huge appetite for the AR and the VR market. I personally think the AR market comes on before the VR market does, but we are seeing a significant amount of interest in this, and Pokemon Go, we call out here the foot traffic that it drove was unbelievable. And then I have 31 seconds, so I'm going to talk super fast. But what we've seen is that a lot of retailers have partnered with external accelerators. So Target did this. We've seen this with other retailers. And this idea is that an accelerator, for those of you who don't know, brings in and mentors and also funds startups. So Target brought in, I think it was 11 startups, but through Techstars. So they vetted them. They looked at 500 applications. They brought in 11. And what was great is that the CEO actually himself, but also a lot of other senior folks, mentored them. And they now have a lot of these startups working with the company to make Target a better retailer and a better retail environment. And even some of the products, there's one, actually I ended up mentoring her as well, a company called Revilar, which is a wearable that actually helps keep people safe. So is now being sold in their stores and online, and Whoopi Goldberg on The View was like, oh, you've got to have this product. And so what we're seeing is that this is a new way to breathe life into retailers and to also, make retail, I would say, more exciting. So with that, I think I got through everything, and I'm right on time. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me.